COVID conspiracist, which means that I don't believe in COVID 19 or anything that the governments are telling me about it. When I say governments, I mean all of them, because I've done my research. And when I say research, I looked at one chart online, and that was enough for me. Am I going to get the vaccine? Absolutely. Do I believe it will work? No way. Why would I believe that it works when I don't believe that COVID 19 exists? So you're asking, why am I getting the vaccine? Well, I don't like to be bothered. That's also why I wear a mask. Keeps people from talking to me. So, when will I get the vaccine? Well, that's up to the government. As of right now, I'm classified as non-essential. So once they put me on the essential list, well, I'll be in line right behind all of you. But by the time we're on that line, 3 more strands will have been created of a disease that I don't believe that exists. And who knows if that vaccine will even work anymore.
From a bunker in beautiful Parkchester of the Bronx, it's Electoral Dysfunction. Now, here's your host, Tom Brennan.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Electoral Dysfunction, the show where comedians and experts debate the news of the week from the safety of their quarantines. I'm your host, Tom Brennan. Thank you for being with us for another week. Thank you to Megan O'Malley for doing our show open. And I am actually off this week. I unfortunately can't be a part of the conversation you're about to see. Long story, involves the law. But fortunately, we got a great guest host who will be Megan O'Malley, pulling a little double duty. So we'll throw you over that conversation one second. But I just wanted to say something. It's our first show of the new year. Happy New Year. It's 2021. I realized I got really mad on New Year's Eve because so many companies had these ads that were like, 2020 was hard, but we made it. And it made me angry. And I've been thinking about why. And it occurred to me why I'm angry. First of all, I don't need a company telling me how bad things were. You laid off your people, even though you got a huge tax break from the Republicans back in 2017, so you can afford it. If you had money put away, you really probably could have done it, but instead you spent it on bonuses for your CEOs. All that aside, the other thing that bugged me about it was like I said, the refrain had to be a lot of like, it was rough, but we made it. And it made me sad because a lot of people didn't make it. And a lot of people who should still be with us right now aren't with us. And that, I'll put politics aside for a second. That's not entirely Donald Trump's fault, although it is his fault. But there's government failures on every level. And it's discouraging and it's sad. These people, so many people we lost last year should still be with us. And it occurred to me, I just want to say right now to anyone who lost someone last year, I'm so sorry that you lost them. You know, we all lost things. I've been lucky enough. No one in my family has gotten COVID, a couple cousins, but everyone's okay. I haven't lost anyone this year to COVID. And so I can't imagine what you're going through, but I'll simply say it's 2021. I'm glad you made it. I'm glad we're all here who are here. I wish more of us were here, but I'm very glad for those of us who are here that we're here. And I hope this new year makes things a little bit better. And I hope this new year we can get back to normal. So with that in mind, I'm going to get out of here and kick things over to my pal, Megan O'Malley, in the panel. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy it. It's a great conversation. Ned Thorne, star white me to the panel.
Thanks, Tom. I'm Megan O'Malley. First, I just want to say Happy New Year, everybody. All right, we got that out of the way. Let's hop right into this because we got stuff to talk about. I'm going to introduce to you our panel. Coming from NC Policy Watch, reporter from Greensboro, North Carolina, Joe Killian. Welcome. Then we have a comedian from Philly, Rachel Semigran. And as always, we have our Bloomsburg opinion Said that weird. Coming from Bloomberg Opinion, he's got opinions, and that's where it goes. It's our resident Republican hailing from Pennsylvania, Mr. Robert George.
Very good, Pennsylvania. I like that. Happy New Year, Megan, Rachel, Joe. 2021, yay! We made it, but like not really. So good to be here. And once again, it's 2021, but it's still brought to you by Mike's Hard Lemonade. Though it's gotten 2020 was so bad for me, I had to like go for the like the larger Mike's Harder Mango. So that's how my new year is starting. That should just so you should know.
I was like 85% sure when you were raising that up, it was going to be a Twisted Tea.
Well, it's very close. It's these cans are in the same section of your favorite pharmacy, like they're right next to each other. And I was wavering between the Twisted Tea and the Mike's Hard Lemonade, but I'm brand loyal, so there we go.
Well, loyalty. That's a really nice way to segue. But first, Robert, my intestines hurt just by watching you drink that. So here we go. The new year has started off, and you know what? Senate got right back in there. They decided to override Trump's defense bill. Okay, then we got the stimulus action happening. Just gonna jump right into it. You know, we got Bernie Sanders, of course. Give everyone $2,000. Let's get people back on their feet. But then, surprisingly, we got the Republican senator from Missouri, Josh Hawley, who's taking his side, which is like, wow, this is great. But things are a little bit crazy. Why can't we get people back on their feet?
Well, Josh Hawley, who we will be talking about in another context in very shortly, is decided he's become he wants to be the biggest hero / villain of the contemporary times. For those who believe that a $2,000 check stimulus is smart, both from a policy and a political standpoint, as Tom has said on the show a couple of times, even though he's been a Democrat all his life, he's happy to throw those damn Democrats over the board if the Republicans just, decide to give him $2,000, because that's the way Tom Brennan rolls, and as we know that. But Josh Hawley, in this very narrow point, to his credit, he didn't just come to this recently. He has been out there going for most of the pandemic year, saying that he thought that it was important to have a second stimulus and a larger stimulus. In fact, for a while, he was like the only Republican, chatting with the members of the progressive caucus. The woman from Washington State, whose name I always screw up, Pramila Jayapal. Yeah. So. And because they, along with Bernie Sanders, had been pushing for a second stimulus, at least 1,200. So. Right, Josh Hawley has been out there, and I think, there's clearly a majority in the Senate, and in fact, I think you could probably, it might be a little bit tight, but you could probably scrounge up the 13 members that you need to get to 60. Except there's one person who doesn't want to do it, and that happens to be Mitch McConnell. And this is one case where one is larger than 51, and one is larger than 60. And he's the Senate Majority Leader. He doesn't want to put it on the floor. So as of right now, it's basically DOA. Now, whether will it still be DOA come January 5th? Well, stay tuned.
Talk about being in a terrible position while there are still elections. It's oh man, I really wouldn't want to be. Wouldn't want to be a Republican trying to explain why if the Senate leader doesn't want to have an up or down vote on this, but I would vote for it. I swear to God, if he did, yeah.
Even Lindsey Graham says that he thinks there should be a well. I should say McConnell is playing a little bit cutesy. He is saying that he might schedule it if they can put in some of the president's preferences of an investigation into election fraud, quote unquote, and a repeal of Section 230, the social media the social media internet provision that prevents Facebook and Twitter from being sued for every crazy, stupid thing that any of us might actually put on there. But even so, if you count Lindsey Graham, if you count the two senators from Georgia, you count some usual suspects like Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins. Let's see. I'm just trying to go into who are some of the other folks out there. Romney probably not, but people like maybe Pat Toomey from Pennsylvania, Lamar Alexander. I mean, you start going up, and you could conceivably get to 13, 12 or 13, but here we are.
Yeah, and Mitch McConnell is also saying, well, this is simply not the right approach, and this is socialism for rich people. Rachel,
No,
I want to hear. I love that eye roll. Go for it, girl.
Well, socialism for rich people is the multi-million-dollar loans that these mega churches, these evangelical mega churches who support the Republican Party, like that's socialism for rich people. Like, and I just want to know, like, I guess it must be Stockholm syndrome or something for the people of Kentucky. Like, who hurt you? This man is horrific, and the fact that he continues to stay elected, stay in power is just, I'm like, I just want to like shake the people of Kentucky and be like, why are you doing this? You could have gotten rid of this turtle piece of shit. Anyway, but I feel like a $600 check is not a stimulus. That's the wrong name for it. You could call it minor recovery. It's not enough for people who have been out of work, people who don't have health benefits. It's simply not enough. It's insulting. And frankly, so is $2,000. We should have been we should have been getting these every month. But why would our government want to pay us to stay home and not spread a deadly pandemic? Who's to say? But yeah, for the life of me, I can't understand why this thing, Mitch McConnell, is like, I don't know if it's just a show of his power. I mean, he's said so many times, like, I don't care, when Democrats are in charge, we're just going to make sure nothing happens. But if this is something that kind of both sides of the aisle are on top of, and clearly the American people are on board with, other than truly just some nefarious, like, cartoon villain shit, I truly can't figure it out. And they keep talking about this like sliding scale thing based on, but it's just, I mean, clearly our government can't function well enough to meet people at their needs, and our belief of American exceptionalism, like getting a handout from the government is a bad thing. It's not a handout when it's your own money being given back to you.
Well, I would say, just to keep what little aspect of my Republican bona fides on my head, the package that did get passed, and finally Trump, signed it, after this, week of BSing. It does include a renewal and an expansion of the PPP program, which, yes, certain wealthy people, not just churches. Churches in general, I can actually see a legitimacy for sending money there. But does Kanye West need it? Probably not. And there are any number of other people that you can look at that don't need it. However, to the extent that the PPP program does get to not just a small number of small businesses is a good thing, and it is, by the way, a way of paying people to stay home, because if the small business qualifies, they get the money from the federal government. They are required to keep their employees on payroll, even if their business is shut down. So that is a way. That is another way, aside from the direct payments, that the government is basically paying people to stay home.
Yeah, unfortunately for some of these small businesses, it's kind of like too little, too late, and we're going to see a lot of businesses going down. And we've also seen a lot of these places have also let go of employees too, and have not been following the rules, which will get them later in the end, because you got to follow the rules if you don't want to pay it back. But no one's reading the fine print. Oh boy. But let's switch it over, because we talked about Josh Hawley before. Man, he is the two-faced villain in this DC comic that we're in. Here he is. All of a sudden, we're like, oh, hey, you're with us. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. And then you turn the corner. And what? What is he about to do, Robert?
I'm glad you used it. And that, by the way, that was very good. It was Two-Face and a DC comic, because Two-Face is indeed a DC comic villain. Excellent, Megan. Excellent. And she's like, and by the way, Electoral Dysfunction fans, you may have actually kind of noticed that because it's the new year, and because it's the new year, Megan O'Malley has actually gotten in like 2 or 3 puns before I've even gotten in one. So there you go. And there's no Tom Brennan. So however you guys were living in 2020, you must have done something right, because Tom's not here, I'm not punning, and Megan is. So boom, there you. Josh Hawley has decided that he wants to get a head start on the 2024 presidential race by supporting Donald Trump staying in office in 2021. He's the first among the Republican senators to say that he's going to raise an objection on January 6th, when the Congress is supposed to go through what is basically a pro forma ratification of the Electoral College certification, which just happened on December 14th. We had already had a number of members in the House said that they were going to raise an objection, and now we have at least one senator in Hawley, and in fact it's going to be more, because as of we're taping this on Saturday. As of Saturday, Ted Cruz, who had in previous iterations of Congress had been, the master villain trying to screw things up. He said he's also going to lead a group of Republican senators. So under normal circumstances, every 4 years, something like this, it's basically an hour or two to have discussion, and then there's a vote. This time it's going to take longer, because once you have an objection in the House and an objection in the Senate, the combined Congress breaks out into their respective chambers, and there is a minimum of 2 hours per objection. So it's not just like, we've got these objections over here and we're going to debate them. It's a 2 hour debate per objection. So what should be, as I said, just an hour or two is probably going to take most of January 6th, and maybe spilling into over into the midnight. So there's a clear majority in the Senate and in the House to ratify the Electoral College. And in fact, let me step back for a minute. You only really need one House, one chamber to declare that that they reject the objection, and the Electoral College vote stands. So even if by chance the Senate said, "Oh, we're holding up on these objections," the fact that the House is going to vote them down would mean that the Electoral College recognition of Joe Biden as the president-elect is going to hold. However, it gives a platform. It gives a platform to these outrageous claims and charges without foundation that the election was robbed, which really creates even more social potential for social unrest within the 60 or 70% of Republicans who thinks that Joe Biden is an illegitimate president.
Yeah, I live in North Carolina, so I'm probably the only one of us who has representatives who are planning on objecting. We've got at least two of them, Ted Budd and Madison Cawthorn, the new guy who's like he looks like he's from a boy band, but he also posts pictures of himself visiting various Hitler-related sites and calling him the Fuhrer on Instagram. It's these superheroes, North Carolina superheroes, are definitely going to be part of that effort.
Oh man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Joe, have you in your reporting, are you picking up just from the electorate whether how much of this is sinking in? I mean, North Carolina, narrowly went to Trump. But are you getting this sense of that there was that the voters there feel that there was massive fraud in these states?
I mean, I would say it's bizarre and unique, except that I think it's happening in so many places in the country. But in our situation, what happened was there was this anticipation that the Democrats in North Carolina would take seats in the General Assembly, that we might flip some congressional, and our Democratic governor won comfortably second term. But other than that, I mean, Democrats lost seats in the General Assembly, and yet we still have Republicans in the state who somehow believe, through some sort of twisted logic, that the election was stolen, that results, including results in North Carolina, are illegitimate, that even though their party won many of these, I mean, we got a just locally here in Guilford County, a county commissioner who thinks that just his election was somehow fraudulent. And
he won, but he thinks the election was fraudulent. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he lost, but but that's the weird thing. Is like you have to. The thing that's flipping me out, particularly about people in North Carolina reacting to this, is you can point to so many places that Republicans made gains or held on when they didn't think that they were going. Like even they didn't think they were going to. And yet there are still prominent Republicans in North Carolina who think that there was massive fraud. It's very, very strange. And I mean, we've got a the way North Carolina works is sort of interesting. So we elect a governor, we elect a lieutenant governor, but they don't run together and they're not in any way related to one another. In fact, the lieutenant governor is often just the guy who's trying to be governor later, and so it's kind of like, polish up that CV. And so we elected a Republican lieutenant governor and a Democratic governor. And the Republican who we elected as lieutenant governor is a Black Republican who has never held office of this type before, who has said some real wacko stuff online about all sorts of things, including election fraud and things. And yet he was elected, so I'm not sure exactly how he thinks there were. It's like you have to parse this stuff out very carefully. Like the fraud was so good that the Republicans managed to take seats and win important races, but also it affected the presidential race and any race that he didn't.
I have said this so many times over my years, that my biggest vulnerability, we're talking about, DC Comics and characters and things like that. my personal kryptonite over the years has been my sense of integrity. If I had just a little bit less integrity, God knows I could be I would be elected statewide and be on the short list for a vice presidential pick. By now. I mean, if 2020 was not the year of the Black Republican, you've got the brother in Kentucky, who threw the Breonna Taylor case. You've got Burgess Owens. Utah, one of the whitest states in the nation, has actually elected 2 Black Republicans to the House over the last decade, and now this one. I didn't even realize that this was going on down in North Carolina. What is his name?
In Utah?
Yeah. What's the lieutenant governor's name?
Mark Robinson.
Mark Robinson. Yeah. So there you go. This could have been my year, and because I have a sense of what's the word I'm looking for? Oh yeah, reality. I just blew it. I missed my shot.
Man, well, I mean,
obligatory Hamilton reference.
So many people right now, they believe that the election was stolen. There's supposed to be a big protest on Wednesday down in DC with the Proud Boys for the Stop the Steal protest. Isn't that so much fun that we have to look forward to that on Wednesday after Tuesday? Tuesday's such a big day for Georgia. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it's here. I can't believe it. We got it's a battle. It's a battle as of right now. The latest polls coming in are putting the Democrats on top. We have the Republican Senator David Perdue versus the Democrat Jon Ossoff. And then, sorry if I'm saying these names wrong to them, I guess. And then we have the Republican Senator Kelly Loeffler versus Democrat. I wrote wrong words. Raphael Warnock. I don't know
Raphael Warnock. Yes,
I was like, what words did I write Raquel on here? I flipped the P and the Q. That's fun. So it's putting Ossoff and Warnock in the lead as of right now. But as we all know, it's not over.
Polls are not exactly accurate in 2020/2021, and there is a best case, worst case scenario, which we have to be on the lookout for. So Saturday, the president was out there tweeting, basically saying that Georgia is rigged and the Democrats are going to steal it, which is a great way. I mean, if you're a Republican, you should probably be tearing out your hair right about now, because the president, who already going into November, blew up one of the Republicans' long-standing advantages, which had been in absentee balloting, basically telling them, don't trust the absentee ballots, don't trust the mail-in ballots. So he's already blown that up, number one, and now he's sabotaging what's going on in Georgia. I'm skeptical of the polling, just because A, it's Georgia, and B, again, a traditional advantage that Republicans have had has been in turning out the vote in runoff elections, and it's primarily in the South where you have these runoff elections. But the president seems bound and determined to blow it up again. It could possibly lose both seats, and then have the very next. Well, I mean, this is the thing. So lose both seats. As a Republican, I'm kind of, I'm not sure exactly how I feel about that. I kind of like the idea of having to split houses, but let's just say possibly lose both seats and then continue to complain that the Republicans, they stole the presidency and they stole the Georgia, they stole the Georgia seats as well. Even though he is arguably he's arguably most responsible for all of that happening. And then you're going to go into the very next day, the electoral college. Democrats then actually having control, de facto control of the Senate, 50-50 plus with, it'll be the voting senators would be a 50-50 Senate on January 6th. I think. Actually, I'm not so sure about that because I think it has to depend on when Georgia actually ratifies the vote. So it could be it's more likely going to be, excuse me, it's probably more likely going to be still be a 52-48 Senate that's going to be voting on January 6th. But the Republicans are going to be complaining, oh, the Democrats stole the election, the presidential election, they stole the Senate election, and then you're going to have the, as Megan said, you've got the Stop the Steal people and the Proud Boys, and the Electoral College, the Congress will ratify the Electoral College, and you could have social and possible violent unrest going because of this falsehood, this conspiracy theories that the president has promulgated, and that could continue for the following 2 weeks up until January 20th, and maybe afterwards as well.
Yeah, I mean,
really what's going to happen in Georgia, but what is really fascinating to me about this is I think that it's an interesting preview of what is Trump going to be like post presidency. I mean, how much influence is he going to continue to have and with whom? I think that to some degree, the as a friend of mine said, Republicans being willing to stand up to Trump finally when it means giving people an extra $600 is very interesting. But I mean, it's essentially what you have to lose if this man's not going to be president anymore. What you might have to lose is how much influence does he wield and against whom does he wield? And I think it could conceivably be unlike any modern presidency. I mean, it's like, Jimmy Carter went and built houses, and George W. Bush went and painted pictures, and Bill Clinton went and tried to wait until everybody forgot about all the things that he wanted them to forget about, Reagan declined into illness, Nixon went into exile and wrote books. I think Trump is going to want to be on the stage. I think he's going to want to continue to, really, I think he's going to want the spotlight still.
He's going to make his own television network. That is 100% what he's going to do. He's angry at Fox News, and he's going to take all of his campaign dollars and he's going to create his own television network so that he can get Emmys or complain about not getting Emmy nominations. Like, he just wants to be spouting what he wants to spout, and he wants to have full control over that and how it's portrayed and projected. And so we'll just have another network of propaganda. And I truly think that's what he plans on, and I'm sure it pissed him off even more that Barack and Michelle got to deal with Netflix. But I think this Georgia and all of this, Stop the Steal stuff is just because COVID kind of forced how the system works for Republicans, right? Because if it's for a very long time, if it's just based on the population, Democrats win, right? And that includes massive amounts of voter suppression, like with the amount of gerrymandering, how hard they make it for people in rural areas to get out and vote. Like, COVID really forced voting to be made more accessible, despite how many times Republicans fought it. In state senates, thankfully Pennsylvania, our governor rejected a lot of things when it came to that. But people started doing more early voting. States and municipalities started doing that. They made mail-in voting widespread. Pennsylvania did really, despite again all of the crazy things that we had with like the naked ballots and the this and the that. Like, it really was this large concerted statewide effort because our governor cared if we died or not. But that's something that Republicans have always depended on is election day. Election day is the only day that voting counts and matters. And they can control that because there are all these systems set in place that even if someone gets the most votes, it doesn't necessarily mean that they win. And so Republicans are much better at gaming the system, and they're much better at the long game, which is why I think it's so funny that they think Democrats have this like massive ruse going on. Like, we're barely good enough to figure something out for a 4-year term, a 2-year term, let alone this. But the Republican long game is, I'm generational. It's crazy. Like, and so I think that this has kind of thrown a wrench into that. But this idea of that the election is fraudulent, that you can't trust mail-in ballots, that early voting, this and that and the other thing, it just feeds into what the next stage of their long game is, to make people not trust our electoral process, because they're like, shit, we already got through all the gerrymandering, we already suppressed people's votes, we already take away people's, we clear the voter polls if you haven't voted in so many years, or if you don't have your driver's license, or if you're a former felon. Like, they've gone through all those things, and they still lost. And so now this is like the next iteration of how do we how do we bring this back, because they game the system. That's how they keep winning, because it's not population.
But except Rachel, I'm gonna push back a little bit on what you said there. It is true that Republicans do play a long game. I'll give you that. Which is one of the, for those of us who have been Republicans for 20, 25 years, it is frustrating to see Donald Trump just blow that up, blow up the Republican Party's faith in absentee balloting, blow up their faith in turning out the vote in runoffs, blow up the Republican Party's support for the Electoral College. Because if you actually look at some of these challenges that the Trump allies have been bringing, they're actually, there is much an assault on the Electoral College as they are anything else. One of the things, though, I think a mistake that Democrats have been making for a couple of decades now is this whole idea of population or demographics is destiny. There's this idea of, well, the electorate is diversifying. There's a browning of America, with Latinos and Blacks becoming a greater portion of those voting. That means it's locked in for Democrats. But that's clearly that's not what's happening, and we saw that
it happened in Florida.
Well, what I'm saying is the population is expanding, but you cannot depend on those on that of what's known as like this rising America, or this expanding American electorate automatically signing up for the Democrats, as we saw in Florida, as we saw in Texas, and Republicans are actually starting to get smart. To what Joe was pointing out as well, they are recruiting, and in many cases electing candidates of color. Go out in California, and Republicans there had a very, very successful congressional year, where you had a number of Republican Asian Republicans getting elected. As I said, you've got a Black Republican in Utah. In Utah, you can't always just assume, even though the population is diversifying, it's not automatically. Donald Trump of all people got a larger share of the non-white vote of any Republican president going back to Nixon in '60. So the Democrats are going to have to fight. Are definitely are not just going to be able to say, well, Republicans are the white supremacist party, and so just automatically vote for us. It's a lot harder. They're going to have to actually literally go out and say, okay, these are the policies that we as Democrats stand for. It's not just because these guys are the other party may be majority white, but it doesn't mean that they're not going to get a lot of non-white votes.
Yeah.
Absolutely, no, absolutely.
I'm worried about that myself. I mean, I've got a large portion of my father's family is Puerto Rican, and the number of Puerto Rican people in my family, younger than me, older than my father's age, who voted for Trump is a startling number. And that family also includes a number of Black people and Latin American people who are not Puerto Rican, and Trump won votes in that, not just like statistically, but like within my family. And it is spooky to think about. And I am not really old enough to remember, to personally remember Reagan's ascendancy, but I'm a little afraid of the same appeal, particularly out of a time of economic hardship. This feeling that all of the other things that Democrats want to talk about, that are social issues and race issues, I'm afraid of the conservative appeal of, yeah, but we'll put money in your pockets. We'll, we're business friendly. We'll create jobs. I'm afraid that will be very, very appealing to groups of people who experience the largest economic hardship.
It's not black and it's not always black and white. It's green and it's blue, as in blue collar. Trump, because of his sort of larger than life machismo macho appeal, it appeals to black men, appeals to Latino men. The vote when people were looking at the election day vote in Florida, they were focusing on, oh, well, it's the Cubans and it's the Cubans and it's the Venezuelans and a lot of those Central Americans who fled socialism. That's part of it, but it's to you, as you're talking about your family, Joe. Puerto Ricans have been generally, dyed-in-the-wool Democrats, whether they're the New York variety or the Florida variety or whatever. The fact that post the hurricanes from 2007 to 2017, and those images of Trump, throwing the paper towels into the crowd and stuff like that. The fact that some of the Puerto Ricans who managed to make it to Orlando and so forth, that they ended up giving their votes to Donald Trump. That I think is as big of a warning sign to Democrats as one can imagine. They're going to have to do a lot. They're going to have to do a lot more. Diversification of message, because you can't just say, oh well, Donald Trump put Mexican kids in cages and you need to vote for the Democrats. I hate to put it this way, some of the Cubans and Puerto Ricans and the Dominicans, they don't really care whether there are Mexican kids in cages. I mean, I hate to be heartless on this, but the Latino vote is not the Latino vote, quote unquote. It is Latino votes, and they all have very, very different worldviews, and the Democrats can't take that for granted.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, no voting block is a monolith, right? No demographic is a monolith. And so, yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I thought, you mentioned that Democrats having diversification of message. I'd like it if we had a message. Like if we could, like that.
Well, that too. Like, that too.
Let's get a message, folks. We were, I don't want to say lucky, but because this past year has been horrific and we've lost far too many lives. But we had an enemy. We had two big enemies, right? We had this president and we had this pandemic. And sometimes people unite against a common enemy better than they do against things that they want. And I would hope going forward, my wish for Democrats is to not be so afraid to make statements, to make bold statements, to be decisive, to say, yes, we're going to invest in public programs. And if it goes back to like that idea of it's the economy, stupid, like there are jobs here, right? Like there are jobs in better energy. There are jobs in this pandemic of vaccine distribution, which I know is a topic that we're getting into soon, but those are jobs. Like that's a thing that I think as Democrats, we haven't done a good enough job at pointing to the other side of the aisle and being like, these things that they're denying, not only are they denying you more access to better livelihoods, but it's also they're denying jobs. Like these programs, these public programs, that evil word, it's job creation. I don't understand why we can't get an economic message together, because everything is about the economy. We're a capitalist society, so everything is the economy. So I don't get it.
Just one more thing to put a button on that and to connect it to the previous conversation about the election and the still ongoing election, and the Republicans, the growing number of Republicans who are jumping on the Trump train to ignore that. There's an argument could be made that that this election's validity is hanging on the thread of a couple of court cases in Joe's North Carolina and in Pennsylvania, because as we've talked about, Democrats were expecting to expand their House majority. Not only did they lose seats, Nancy Pelosi is going to be basically running the smallest House majority in decades, and that majority is essentially based on North Carolina and Pennsylvania Supreme Court decisions throwing out the gerrymandered districts in those two states. If those decisions had gone the other way, we could have a tied House right now, or one or two votes either way for it to being a Republican majority. And if you've got a Republican majority in the House, already a majority of the current Republican caucus is ready to challenge to object to this election. If the Republicans actually had the majority, and it looked like there was going to be a challenge was going to go on, the pressure on the Republicans on the Senate if Donald Trump is saying this, I was robbed. If a House Republican majority is saying, oh, we think he was robbed as well, and the pressure on the Senate to go along with that. That's basically how narrow the integrity of the 2020 election is. And so that should be a wake-up call to everybody who believes, does my vote really count? Yeah, it really does. And also for Democrats to get their act together as well, because if the House had gone Republican, it's quite possibly the 2020 election could have ended up turned over.
Well, I'm just gonna switch the topic right there.
Sorry about that, folks.
I mean, you covered a lot in that, and then all of a sudden I was like, why am I getting scared during his speech? Okay, let's get back to one of the bad guys of 2020 that we're all on board. Like, we're trying to battle this. It's the pandemic. It's COVID. We got vaccines. The vaccines are going out. We got Operation Warp Speed. I hate that name so much. But they promised. They said, hey, 20 million doses are going to be administered by January 1st. 12.4 million were distributed, and only 2.79 million were actually administered. Why do we think people aren't having faith? I don't know. Why do we think this pandemic is not going anywhere anytime soon?
You guys read that LA Times story this morning? The LA Times this morning said that between 20 and 40% of frontline medical workers are refusing to take the vaccine. That's in LA County, right? In another county in California, I'm forgetting which one, it was like 50%. And that led them to have to meet to decide what to do with the dosages that were going to be left over. That's Los Angeles. That's not Kentucky. It scared the hell out of me.
And then you got out in Wisconsin, all those doses that were just ruined.
Right.
So that person.
So basically we're talking about we were expecting 20 million doses and we ended up with doses. Sorry, Megan, I had to catch up.
There's the pun. There it is.
Yeah, I'm such a prick, I admit it. But Mitt Romney, the arguably the last sane Republican nominee from 2012, he put out not just a statement, but like a sort of a vision board on how he got a lot of flack in 2012, because of his background being Bain Consulting and all this other kind of stuff. But the fact is, the guy knows how to get things done and get things distributed and so forth. And if I were Joe Biden, I would ask Mitt Romney if he wanted to have a special role in the administration. I mean, it's not going to lose the Republicans a seat because it's Utah. But I think having somebody like that who can get things done on a pragmatic way and also be able to talk to Republican and Democratic governors in terms of getting the stuff on the ground and getting it distributed as fast as possible, I think is something essential. No, it's absolutely absurd. I would say if Gavin Newsom and I'm the governor of California, or if I'm Garcetti, the mayor in LA and so forth, saying, look, first responders, you have no pun intended this time, you've got the first shot at this. It's there for you. If you don't want it, that's fine. We're not going to let this stuff literally just deteriorate. We'll just make it first come first serve. If you don't want it, we'll start certainly going into the nursing homes and let anybody who wants to get it. And then if there's still some left over, we open it up to the general public, because it would be just given the miracle that we've been presented here, when we've had Pfizer and Moderna, and I think Johnson & Johnson's online too, almost online as well, that the country is so screwed up that we can't distribute these lifelines and get us out of this hell that we've been lingering in for the last 10 months. It's more than tragic.
Yeah, it definitely is hard to have faith at this point in anything like getting distributed. It's like, because you can check in, well, at least in New York you can, when you can go get it. And I can tell you that 82% of New York City will be getting the vaccine before me, but that keeps getting pushed back further and further. So yeah, nobody should be really seeing an end to this, because they don't have their end all set.
This whole pandemic, on every level of response, I keep thinking about how weird it is for me, because I feel like, so I grew up in the military. My dad was a career Marine and my grandfathers were Navy guys. And, the reality for the military is socialized medicine. That's just for generations in my family, and it worked fine. But you hear it'll never work for the country. The reality for the military is all sorts of things that people think can't work for the general population. One of those is you have to take fucking vaccines. You don't have an option not to take a vaccine. That is irresponsible. It is detrimental to the team, and you don't have the option not to. Big thing for the Marine Corps that I grew up with is improvise, adapt, overcome. And I feel like we have been unable to do that as a country and unable to do that as sort of states and municipalities throughout this pandemic. It's like the idea that we were presented with the option of perhaps not going out to dinner and to bars for a while, and we would get tamp this thing down, and people were like, absolutely not. I am not sacrificing not going to bars and restaurants, but and just blew me away. It's like the idea that your response to a major tragic circumstance like this is things have to remain essentially as they were. We cannot improvise, we cannot adapt, therefore we can't overcome. Is crazy. And it's like I really don't know how we get around that. I mean, you can't legislate your way out of it. You can't innovate your way out of it. It's just shitty, poor thinking.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a surprise that the rollout's been a mess when you have the office of the president and half of the people who govern this country saying that this pandemic is a hoax. Even when one of their own dies, they tell you that it's not real and it's not happening. So of course the rollout isn't working, and it's just symptomatic of, not to make it punny, of the issues of this entire response, right? Like if there's no organization at the federal level, then when it goes down to the states and then down to the municipalities, we're all just like chickens running around with our heads cut off. There's no right way to do this. And then when a city makes up its own rules, but it doesn't follow the state, that it's just all of these layers of mess that we can't untangle. And I'm also very concerned about the fact that people think the vaccine is our Hail Mary, that's what's going to get us out of this. But if you have enough people who are going to refuse it, but also you can't just vaccinate and say that it's over. You have to vaccinate and still social distance and still wear your masks and still follow all the guidelines that people have not been doing for the past almost year at this point. And so it's just, it's not at all surprising. It's extremely disappointing. I mean, not that this hasn't been a partisan country in a long time, but I think the last 4 years have been exceptionally horrific in terms of us versus them, red versus blue, this side versus that side. I'm right, you're wrong. There's been no and this was an opportunity for us as a country to be like, oh, this is a common enemy. This is, but it got politicized as soon as it entered our borders, and even before that. So the fact that the disease itself isn't believed, like it's really hard to have faith in the vaccine. But as soon as I can, I'm needle phobic, and I'm like, shove it in my arm, I don't care, let's go.
Well, and the Carolina, it's so weird because we've had these nobody can sort of agree on the best way to deal with it from a state and a municipal level, in addition to the federal government. So in North Carolina, we have a very, very popular Democratic governor who throughout this pandemic has been trying to sort of thread a needle between the number and types of businesses that are actually shut down and are where we're sort of limiting the numbers and keeping things open. And a lot of Democrats think that he's gone too far in terms of keeping things open that obviously are not essential and that are leading to people crowding in and disobeying gathering rules and things. Republicans on the other end think it's rank tyranny and abridging of civil rights to not have as many people as you want in a nightclub, for instance. And one of the interesting proposals that happened months ago in this pandemic at the General Assembly level, they were like, listen, we're going to try to not have so many people crowding in bars. You know what might help? Allow bars and restaurants to serve to-go cocktails, right? This would keep it would keep the businesses, it would help to keep the businesses open, was the thought. And if people really want to have a cocktail, let them have a cocktail, particularly because in North Carolina, all the liquor stores are run by the government.
Same in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and so that's already like a weird thing. So why don't we just do that? And the General Assembly
we did the to-go thing up here in New York as well in the early days. Yeah.
But the General Assembly
Then they took it away.
The General Assembly couldn't get it done. The Democratic governor just like a couple of weeks ago had to do it by executive order, right? And I got friends who work in restaurants who were like, well, and that's great, but when you do it by executive order, A, you can only do it for so long, and B, the startup cost for having to get the right kind of containers and all of this stuff essentially eliminates the profit because under the executive order, you can only, so for instance, if my wife and I are getting a to-go dinner like we did the other night, if one of us goes to pick it up, they can only serve us one drink to go. If two of us, then two. It's like there are all these like this threading of the needle is so like nuts and eliminating any gains. And I feel like it's particularly bad in North Carolina because we're so schizophrenic in terms of, you know, every single poll during this pandemic has shown that overwhelmingly people like the way that the governor has handled it, and yet all of our other elected leaders, not all of them, a majority of our elected leaders in the General Assembly think that, you know, he's bungling it, it's tyranny, and, you know, and all this. And so our legislation and the way that we're responding at a state level is reflecting that.
Well, guys, I hate to, I want to keep talking, but I'm so sorry. We have to wrap this up right now. Gosh, so much more. But there's not going to be so much more to talk about in 2021. Isn't that fun and exciting? We're never going to not have anything to talk about ever again. Oh, great. Hey, guys, before we leave, let's just go around the horn. I'm going to use that phrase. Let's go around the horn and tell everybody where they can check you out. We'll start with you, Joe.
I'm on Twitter at Joe Killian PW, JoeKillin PW. And a lot of it is journalism and politics stuff, but occasionally I just watch Misery and tweet my thoughts about it in real time.
Rachel?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Rachel_Semigran, SEMIGRAN. You know, it's usually me making dumb jokes. I've been self-medicating through this pandemic with bad television, so you can see my hot takes on Bachelor Nation and other terrible things of the like. I have no shame. Who cares? You know, we survived. That's it.
And Robert?
So on Twitter, I will fess up. I'm a Twitter whore, Twitter tramp, however you want to call it. I'm at Rob George. You can, you know, come for the bad puns, stay for the cogent political analysis, or come for the analysis and, you know, and avoid and try to avoid the bad puns or the great puns, depending on your perspective. I am a editorial writer and columnist with Bloomberg Opinion. So you can also follow at BOpinion as well for my takes and the takes of my colleagues there as well. And yeah, exactly. That's basically where you find just about all things Robert George.
Yeah, and I'm Megan O'Malley, and you can find me on Twitter at MegsO'Malls. It's MEGSOMALLS. Yeah, Instagram as well. That's great, guys. Thank you so much to the panel for being here.
Megan, thank you so much. You were great filling in for our fearless leader Tom Brennan. Thank you so much. Bringing the energy and the insights as always.
Well, on that compliment, I'm gonna bring it back to you, Tom.
Thank you very much, Megan O'Malley. Great conversation. Thank you so much to the panel for being here. And as always, just want to say a quick thank you to Declan Shalvey and Jordy Belair for designing the Electoral Dysfunction Eagle art. Thank you to Kevin Scott for designing our show animation. Thank you to Joanne Harris for composing our theme song. And thank you to Ned Thorne for helping me put these together every single week. And now, to play us off, welcome 2021. We're going to kick things over to Harlem. You know her from old school sketch comedy. You know her from this show. We're really excited to have a little music from our old pal, Hannah Bell. Ned Thorne, star White Me to Hannah Bell.
I can't play. I'm kidding. All right, that was the sound of 2020, and hopefully here's the sound of 2021. Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be tears of old lang syne. For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne, we'll take a cup of kindness yet for old lang syne. Happy New Year!